some sort of outside, either a temporary thing like the school district uses and those mobile classrooms, that you can use those and enter a building through that, so you come through that for security. We could also, we'd be hooked up right to the courthouse we have. We may also be able to use it for a couple of offices or staff meeting or whatnot, something like that. Other of those mobile units maybe could be put on the lawn or the parking. But the accessibility we discussed this morning, you could come in from the south side through, like we were going to connect this annex originally. That would be fairly extensive remodeling, and if that was only a short-term or intermediate, I'm not clear we'd want to invest that kind of money. We would also lose our break room if we did that. If we come in from the south side, we would improve accessibility of the ramps there, but as far as major changes in the building, we have budgeted and will start undertaking changing jury boxes and stuff like that. But it's very difficult to address accessibility in the current building beyond that bare minimum because there's just not enough space to even do it.
So we identified about $275,000 in immediate needs of the existing courthouse. We did that in the last budget cycle, and we funded about $260,000 of that in this existing budget cycle. That includes accessible jury boxes. It also it talks about steps in the drainage issue, garage tuck pointing, some of the sidewalk improvements, the wall, thing of that nature. So that has been already funded for, and so we'll see some of those upgrades. We also had some issues in regards to the floors and coverings. We were holding off on that, determining if this was going to pass or not. It didn't. So we are able to address at least some of those needs. The question is, how do we make this building, at minimum, secure? And secure in our minds is at least, let's stop any kind of potential weaponry from getting into that building, and then beefing up some of the security issues in regards to employees, likely from the sheriff's office. That would be the personnel behind that. So that's kind of where we left it at 11 o'clock this morning.
The old garage behind the building that he's talking about, that's the one that we need to tuck point and do some repairs on and get all the old records out of that one. That contains the boilers and the heating units for the present courthouse, so we have to put quite a bit into that to get that fixed up and get those old records out of there. And then personally, I favor coming in through the south side of that building and into the break room area rather than put a building out there on the end of that courthouse, and maybe we have to move the county attorney out or something like that. That's my personal feelings into another space. It's a lot better for them to be in the facility and be accessible to the courts or upstairs and down, but I don't know how we can have everything in there at the same time and make this secure as it should be with the bathrooms and everything on that west end where you come in the backside. So I think it's going to be very difficult.
And, I mean, we talked about this morning that if you made those changes, you could somewhat, and I would say somewhat, secure the building so that weapons were not coming in, but the building would not be safe, and that the inmates, the law enforcement, the juries, the victims' families, the defendants' families, everyone still is commingling, still is using the same bathrooms, still using the same hallways, still not enough space to separate them, but you could create something on the exterior of the building or in the break room that would at least screen people. But I don't think anybody should think that that's actually safe, because once they're screened, they're all together, and it's perfectly, people are capable of harming someone without a shotgun.
So at minimum, we did request to the facilities manager to communicate with the architect that had done some previous work, to look at options for both the south and the west. And again, some of those options did include a temporary mobile home style building that could be located outside of the existing courthouse. And that's the kind of, I called it this morning, I think I said it 3 times, pretty pathetic, that there's a chance that we might have a mobile home sitting outside our courthouse. But, you know, residents have spoken. Even though a majority of them said yes, that's just not how this works. And so if that's what it takes to create a secure entranceway or whatever is the question ultimately for all of us is, how much money do you want to put? Is it a temporary quick fix solution, or is it something we want to spend a little more money on? Well, we don't have a whole lot more money on it. So that gets us our hands pretty tied as well. Another thing that we brought up really has to do, and Janelle brought this up, has to do with the Iowa legislature and the governor, and how they hand tie us when it comes to providing safe space and secure facilities for primarily state work. It's pretty frustrating that they don't give us very many options to be able to address that, and I think that we're not the only ones in the state of Iowa that's dealing with old courthouses, quite frankly. And that is something I think we're aggressively going to be communicating with our legislators and with the governor's office and saying, okay, now what do we do? And I think that we probably need to do a better job of communicating with the state court services as they give a lot of pressure onto those legislators as well to give us some more flexibility to be able to generate additional revenue, primarily to meet the safe and secure and space needs of actual state services. So, all right, so that's just a little bit of an overview of some of the things that are on the table. And the other part of the conversation really is that no decision is made. And the question ultimately for you as committee members and for all of us here on the Board of Supervisors, and from Janet Linus's perspective and your staff, and Sheriff Lekrovic and Steve's here and their staff, and some others here, ultimately it's about what should we do and how do we address this issue. And I think we're going to have a much more in-depth conversation over the next several months here. But the reason that we're hurrying this a little bit is because our budget cycle is right now. And so over the next month and a half, we have to have some numbers to put in place to determine either taxes are going up or services are going to get cut to help address this courthouse need. I mean, it's about where it comes. I mean, something else is going to get deferred, something else is going to get pinched back to help accommodate for at least some of these immediate needs. Maybe some of these expenses won't be too bad. We do have metal detectors, okay, just so everyone realizes that. Thank you to the city of Cedar Rapids and Lynn County for giving us their old equipment when they got brand new stuff paid for primarily by the federal government. So
I would say, and the jail had nothing to do with this, but I would say that there's some changes probably on the horizon on the prisoners down Muscatine County, and maybe some changes down there. I expect that cost to rise significantly here in the next year or so. So don't know what's going to happen there, but I think our costs are going to rise significantly.
all right, so some initial thoughts. Just come on up, and again, I don't think we have to get too in-depth here. I think that what we want you to do is just kind of take a step back like we have and say, okay, now what do we do?
Thanks, Terrence. Mike Carberry, Supervisor-elect.
Sounds good, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Feels good.
I've never said that before in public. Thanks for your hard work on this. I, too, am frustrated. I supported this as much as I can. I like the idea of moving forward with temporary solutions and taking a step back and taking our breath and analyzing some stuff on long-term solutions and getting people at the table. Like I had a nice conversation with our former county attorney, Patrick White, and he said, when this fails, come and talk to me. And And so we need to have more conversations with people, I think, that weren't in favor of this, and get them at the table and try to hammer out what would be palatable to you people. What would pass? What would, yeah.
I saw Pat White's tweet last night.
Oh, yeah, I did not.
And I'll just say that I personally have sat in the last 5 years, several hundred hours of meetings, public hearings, public comments, listening posts about the courthouse and jail, and Pat White didn't show his face once. So I find it outrageous for Pat White to, as a former county attorney who worked in that building, to fail to come to any meetings for 5 years that I've been here, fail to offer one single opinion, and then sit there and think that, all of a sudden he's going to be the savior of it. I'll just tell you that I'm glad Pat White's not the county attorney of this county, because Janet Linus has more leadership in her pinky than Pat White ever had on anything. And to sit there at the last minute and say that he has all the answers when he didn't show up to a single meeting in 5 years. A single meeting.
Yeah, I'm not advocating that Pat White has the answers. I'm just saying that we need to open the conversation and take a deep breath. And as far as the short-term solutions, I actually think that the bigger and the uglier these temp buildings can be, and if we could put them on the east side of the building and really piss people off, that might generate a little bit more discussion, and people said, that's an unacceptable solution. So maybe we should think about a temporary solution that is so ugly that it works in our favor.
There's probably a few places down at Regency we might be able to talk
so
to.
That was just my initial thoughts, is that we need to move forward and then we, on the temporary solutions through the budgeting process, and then slow down a little bit and open up the conversation, start all over, think outside the box. There's other places around the state that have put new justice centers together.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
I mean, we tried to do that last time, bring in some of those opponents who are against this.
Yeah.
We actually listened to them and took the jail off the off the initiative. But there's folks, quite frankly, that believe, I really think they believe, that the Board of Supervisors has the authority to change federal and state laws. And I think that, I don't know if we just need to do a basic, I'm going to call it second grade, maybe third grade government lesson with some of these folks. We can probably explain to them that's not how this works.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
But it does bring up one of the things we talked about this morning that I don't want anyone to think that we've given up on, is that we remain very interested in a mobile crisis unit. We believe that part of that can be funded through the regional mental health group because they fund it in Lynn County. And so we will be making progress on that. And with the end of the election, we look forward to Kingsley's subgroup, Disproportionate Minority Contact, getting together and coming up with even more, pushing the envelope. So I think those things are really should be on the intermediate and short-term and long-term list of things we eventually come up with. And so I think we can make a lot of progress on some of those things, even without taking over control of Congress and the state government and changing law.
That said, no matter what changes we do make within that courthouse, it's not going to expedite the cases. There's still going to be waiting periods, at least a year or 2 years, for civil cases versus criminal cases.
Jim McCarriger. I'm disappointed, as you all are, with the outcome. I'm sad to see that our community doesn't take the interest it should in safety and security, or the commitment to safety and security. I'm happy that 56% of the people do, but the other 44% have taken the safety and security and potential harm of people and put them aside for other issues. But that aside, if we're going to be doing something on a temporary basis, I'm all for doing something on the outside of the building. We already have too much congestion inside this building. That's part of the problem. If we're going to be putting stuff inside this building, all we're going to do is congest it even further. We've already got narrow hallways, staircases. In case of an emergency, we already have problems with people being able to get out, which is the safety issues I think Terrence were talking about. That doesn't get solved by any of this. So putting something inside is extraordinarily dangerous from my vantage point, because you're just going to be taking more space from an area that we don't have enough space already. So I'd like you to keep in consideration that we have congested problems in this courthouse, and if we're going to be doing something for safety and security, I'd like the board to at least take in consideration what they do to accommodate that problem, and remember that we still have extraordinarily major issues with this courthouse that we don't want to compound by taking away from space in an already congested building.
One thing I say, we got limited funds without a bond too, so there's so much we
use
can
those
do.
limited funds in a manner that we don't congest the courthouse more, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, we have to find an accessible location to get people in and out. So it's either likely west or south.
Dawned on me one other thing that happened today as we had a meeting with our facilities director, Eldon Slaughter, just to talk about a couple of years of plans of facilities and space. Some of the money that was budgeted for the courthouse we'd put on hold, including tuck pointing the garage, or that building in the back.
That building behind. That was going to be not there anymore.
Now I'm tired. $29,000, and we just put it on hold. So what we instructed Eldon to do is to work with the clerk of courts to get all documents removed from there, because they have argued that it's an OSHA violation to start with, and pursue the tuck pointing and also an investigation of the suitability of parts of that building for some other purpose, which could include offices, because we can't just tear down the building, the boilers are in it. So, we just didn't want to spend the money on stabilizing the building if we were going to tear it down for a courthouse annex. But now we're going to have to keep the building, and if we're going to keep the building, we're curious if we can get any space out of it, even the janitor closet, whatever, other than just storing paper. So that's there too, but I agree with you on I don't want to put the screening thing in the break room. I think it has to go outside, whether it's something that's constructed or it's one of these mobile classroom type things. Someone can argue with me which one we can do the most affordable and the quickest, but I don't want to see us take more space from inside. I just don't know how we have any to give up.
What are other initial thoughts? Anyone else have any just initial thoughts as we kind of just have a chance to just take a breath here? Anyone else want to chime in? Shy. And again, we'll have a lot more opportunity here as a committee. The committee doesn't go away. The issue doesn't go away. The jail issue doesn't go away. By voting no, it just it doesn't go away.
Jerry Allen, Department of Correctional Services. As everybody else has already said, it was disappointing, and I'm sure that some people were saying, yep, it's happened again. I think we're going to have to, as you've already spoken to, take another approach in addressing this from a different perspective by speaking out to people that hold the strings at the state level in terms of the supermajority issue. I think that'll be key. I think we're going to, maybe something else to look at is thinking outside of the box in terms of partnerships with some of the local communities in terms of building and cost sharing. And that may be what it takes to move this project forward. You've already suggested some very short-term solutions, and I agree, making it outside and very visible to the voters is one way. I've been on this committee now for 7 years, and I can tell you, Mike, we've had a variety of people in and out, and again, we've had people, the naysayers, come in and taking suggestions. Obviously, taking the jail off the ballot didn't solve the issue. So I think it's still a challenging road ahead, but there's going to be work to do to address what you can in the meantime.
That's what's interesting. It didn't change the numbers much, whether the jail was with it or not.
No, not by much, but.
No, and the frustrating part is it's not going to get cheaper.
No, it's definitely not getting cheaper.
You want to add a jail, you want to add a courthouse annex. We saw how much it went up just by not making it as efficient as just a justice center.
My initial thoughts then are that we think way outside the box.
Well, and we had a little bit of that conversation, and a lot of us have already been approached by folks who have said, the courthouse, it's done. Do you sell it? Do you tear it down? Do you
sell it to a developer?
Yeah.
Do they put apartments in there?
Do you look at open warehouses that are out there? 2 suggestions: the Menards, the North Dodge Old Hy-Vee. I mean, you start to look outside the box, and the potentials. I had someone come up and suggest, why don't you move everybody out of your Health and Human Services building, secure that building, and move everyone over there into the courthouse. I mean, everything is on the table. And
well, thanks for listening. Obviously, it won't be resolved tonight, but thank you.
Jerry's comments. We also have a joint meeting on December 11th at 7:30 a.m. with the City of Iowa City Council, and we have asked that a joint facility for law enforcement be part of the conversation with that meeting. So 7:30 a.m. on December 11th at Emma Harvant Hall.
And the board was also interested in at least looking at still acquiring Harrison Street, or at least a portion of Harrison Street, particularly if we have to take parking out to accommodate a new entranceway. That would take parking away, and we could potentially use some of that street, so that is going to continue to be pursued with the city. What other comments, thoughts?
I think part of the problem here is, I'm Dorothy Whiston, and I'm on the committee, is that we're seeing the results of a widening dissatisfaction with how the criminal justice system in our country works, and that dissatisfaction is local as well. I think some people wouldn't vote for this because they saw it as their only protest vote for how criminal justice works in our country. And I think a lot of people who did vote for it voted for it in spite of those feelings. And so I think besides all these very practical things that need to be done, that we also need to, as a committee, begin to envision how criminal justice should work, period, and what bits of that we can do. We can't change federal or state law, but there are things that we can do at the local level and at the county level to influence. We can't change local policing, but we can certainly influence it, and we can change how things operate to some degree. And so whether it's the racial disparity work or the mobile crisis, then there are probably other things we haven't even looked at, I think, to think outside the box, philosophically as well as practically, is an important part of our job.
Thank you. Thoughts? Anyone else? Don't be shy.
I'm not on the committee. Can I speak to this?
Yeah. I thought maybe some folks that were actively against their comments, they might actually show up at our meeting. But
my name is Bob Welsh. I agree with everything Dorothy said. The reason why I came is I think the vote no by those persons is because of a lack of trust in the criminal justice system that we have. The one place where I disagree with Dorothy, and the time I've known her, I think this is about the first time I've disagreed with you, and that is that we can't do anything about the policing. I think we can. I think as citizens of various municipalities, the police chiefs work for people who work for elected people. And I think that we maybe need, as a part of Dorothy's statement of looking at the criminal justice system, that does involve policing. And that does, I think, the ability of citizens like myself and all the people here can say, hey, this is what we want, this is what we expect. And I think that is going to have to occur before you're going to get a positive vote.
Thanks. Other thoughts? Again, I think our conversation will continue. I think we'll have a larger room, a bigger venue, and start thinking. I think the approach is going to be kind of, what do we call it? Short-term, immediate, long-term, intermediate, something like that, and kind of just start writing down where do we think we can go and what it's going to cost. And I, want to change those laws or change those things. I think that we should have another courthouse probably in about 15 or 20 years.
I think it's hard to read the electorate. I mean, I studied political science, and I've been a junkie with political process for my whole life. In yesterday's vote in Johnson County, you had a vote that was going to voluntarily raise your property tax, get the majority. So it passed the majority, but not the supermajority. And you had a referendum in Iowa City that would have lowered your property tax, and it failed. And now when you throw in the rest of the county, the things that would have lowered their property tax failed significantly all over this county. I think 3 cities passed the sales tax? 4 cities passed the sales tax. So you start off, you can look at those numbers and you'll know kind of who won't voluntarily raise their own taxes. And it's about 30 to 35% of people would literally never vote for a bond referendum, very rarely vote for a bond referendum. And so when you're trying to get to 60%, you're dealing with 10 to 5% of the electorate that you have to get to flip, because the other 35% are just, they're not going to do it. 30 to 35 never. And so if you look at yesterday's vote, if you want to, when I've had some more rest and I can study it a little more, I will, I'm a numbers geek, but it's a really kind of mixed message that they've given local government. Majority said raise my property tax, and the minority said lower my property tax in Iowa City, and it's just really a strange vote. But I think it's easy to read too much into. It's the criminal justice system needs to be revised that control the vote, because there's 30% of people who just won't raise their property tax, period. And it's the sliver and the margins that matter. But before we looked at historic preservation people and we tried to model what we could do different for that, and I think we gave them literally the best plan, if you believe in historic preservation, we could possibly give you, is what we put forward. So I don't know. It's hard to read these 4 different referendums on this various topic and get anything that's kind of useful. Maybe someone smarter than myself could figure it out, but I don't really see where there's a roadmap to passing this anytime in the near future. I just don't. And then I, as a county supervisor, doing nothing I don't think is an option for us. We have to keep coming up with other ideas. And so that's kind of where I am. And I think these short-term and intermediate ideas are bad. I mean, there's not a single thing good about it. But I think we have to do that. I think we can't just put our head in the sand and stop doing anything and wait till the electorate changes in a couple of years. But the big issue we face is a lack of revenues because of commercial property tax reform and TIF dollars. We don't have a lot of extra money to be putting into the courthouse or the jail.
We're not even allowed to.
And so we've got kind of a problem here that without the legislature helping, I don't really know how we can fix no matter how hard we try.
And in our position, and kind of change the tone a little bit, we're expected to do a lot more with roads and bridges and things like that. Without that sales tax, we don't have that. It's still going to come off the property taxes to address those things, or we just start closing some roads. But I would like to address, Jim, and County Attorney, I just basically want to make it clear, I'm not wanting to move you out. What I'm looking at is the space. And I agree, if you put something outside, it's an advantage. But if we put it on the west side by that back door, we literally close off all the parking. You come in the north side, you're going to have to turn around and go back out if we have something outside that back side, or go clear down around on the back side, maybe take some parking out of there so they can make a circle. But then they can't get back up into the south parking lot. So it really makes it difficult. So to me, if it's outside, it's fine. It has to be on that south side if you want to maintain any parking there. Otherwise, people are going to have to park elsewhere.
Kingsley Botchway, City of Iowa City. So yeah, I agree with a lot of the points that Dorothy and Bob made as well. One of the things that, since Terrence said that everything was on the table, and again, excuse me for if I slur words or everything else, I'm really tired and actually almost fell asleep not so long ago because of the election. But, we could try a different way of asking and opportunities as far as, I was just sitting here thinking about, using a survey or sending out some type of information or feedback to have people get back in some type of way. I mean, sending a letter to all the voters, it wouldn't be a targeted mailing as far as from a campaign situation. It'd be more from the county asking whether or not, what do you want to see as far as, either a courthouse annex or even the Justice Center, opening up back for discussion, just the entire range of possibilities. I just kind of throw that out there because, it would achieve a lot to really get the percentage of the no and really understand what that particular issue might be. I mean, there's obviously the people that have come before this committee before and have spoken about whatever the issue might be, but there's also a lot of other no voters that have done it for whatever other reasons, and so it would be interesting to hear their points as well.
Other initial comments, thoughts? I think we've kind of, like I said, just start to kind of think about and start talking to residents and kind of put it in perspective of, if you have not very much money, what do you do? And that's really the perspective we're at. So, all right. So let's go ahead and just...
Terrence, can you define not really much money? We're putting in this fiscal year and the next couple of years, $3 million in the jail.
Yeah.
We already spent $1.2 million on tuck pointing the courthouse.
We're able to...
Can't remember exactly.
Ever since probably Pat and I have been on the board, the county has been able to put about between $1 and $2 million out of the general fund into maintenance, deferred maintenance, upgrades, things of that nature. That pays for roofs, heating, boilers, ACs, all of that stuff. And so this last batch of money, basically, we deferred pretty much everything around here and to help address the jail issue. And so we do have some flexibility, but there's only so long. I mean, I know how Rod feels, but those of us who have water come into our ceilings, it gets to a point where the roof needs to get fixed. I mean, for this building. I mean, so we're just in that kind of scenario here. We have an ambulance and medical examiner that is to the point where we don't know where to put ambulances anymore because they don't fit in the building across the street. So there are a lot of immediate needs that we're going to have as well to deal with. And again, cash strapped. Not just cash strapped. If we can tax for it, we tax for it. The legislature and the governor and the code won't let us tax for a certain amount of money over a certain level.
So the question we're asking people then is,
At least through bonding.
what would you do to improve the courthouse situation if you had a budget of up to $3 million?
In a couple of years to do it.
Someone sent me an email today who said we could build the entire courthouse annex for $5 million. Wherever they can get that deal, I'm really curious about it. We're talking about an ambulance building that, if we put the 4 elements we wanted in it with Kingsley's voting machines, would cost $4 million itself.
I mean,
So-
an elementary school costs $18 million now, doesn't it? 16?
More than that.
Oh, they're like 28, aren't they?
Yeah, I was going to say 30.
Well, I'm behind the times.
So, are we talking about $3 million, like we're putting in the jail?
I guess that's a conversation. Can we hold off on 2 or 3 of our immediate needs on our list?
We can put that in there, but at the same time, we're not gaining an awful lot. It's just pouring the money down the drain. It's going to take care of a temporary fix, but it's not going to be very long. Jerry, I think, is right. I mean, we need to look out of the box and maybe a joint facility with some of the cities in some manner or form.
You still got to get 50% of the people.
Well, you get 50%, but I don't think you're ever going to get 60%. And the reason I say that is, like Mr. Botchley said, that every individual has a different reason, and the biggest reason I've heard is they don't want any additional taxes. And I think that's true. I think we're in a situation where you have a certain number that can't afford it. We really can't, particularly the elderly and others that's struggling. So I think we're a victim of times right now, and it's going to be a long time before we can even get a 60% at all, if ever.
Other thoughts?
Could you explain that 50%?
Yeah. So there is a bit of a quirk in the system of Iowa code that does allow for county and city governments to come together into what's called a joint authority, meaning that, similar to a government that isn't under the auspices of either the county or the city, it's a bit of a 2080 style of agreement, similar to what we have with the Joint Emergency Communications Center, where this authority basically becomes the entity that would be governing over that particular structure or that particular investment. And if you're able to create that, there is an opportunity to do so that would require only a 50% passage versus a 60%. And we have looked at some of those opportunities, but to get the cities to come together, or at least Iowa City, maybe others, to say, let's build a building together with you, that's a pretty monumental task. No one wants to give up that control. And then you put in a whole lot of other politics in all this, including the fact that you're going to have a jail a part of that conversation.
Scott County did this several years ago, and they joined together and did that. And basically it's shared space between them. And it could be divided up where the city pays their own water bill, pays their own electricity. You share the facility itself, and the group that oversees the facility actually meets once or twice a year. They pay and take care of any repairs that need done on the building, anything other than that. And the sheriff or the city actually runs that building, the operations as they would normally.
So that kind of potential exploration is going to be at least reviewed. But are you all ready to go down the jail conversation again? I mean, that's what we're talking about here, when we can't even get a courthouse passed. So, anyway, other thoughts, comments? All right, so with that, we'll move on in our agenda. We have also an update and direction regarding addressing the needs of the jail, including but not limited to plans and process for necessary repair and maintenance, projects and other related issues. And as was noted, we did identify today in our meeting with both the facilities and the sheriff that we're in the process of now bidding. This would be assisting us with controls and doors, but also some issues regarding the inmate housing, flooring, painting, other upgrades, some of the plumbing issues, and then we also have issues in regards to the elevator and some other things of that nature, and so we'll be looking at that along with some lighting within the existing jail facility. We're pleased to see that our bids came in under what we had projected, and so that's why we're looking at least upgrading the lights and then also the elevator at this point. There's still a pretty significant expenditure out there, and that would be the generator, along with additional door maintenance, things of that nature. So at least as we promised in our last budget cycle, we'll address our existing jail and try to keep it open as long as the state jail inspector allows us to keep it open. So, any other thoughts on that?
And I think, as Terrence had mentioned, the price is going up. It's about 5 to 7% a year, according to the architects, of labor and materials. So it's going to increase significantly over the years.
Okay. Reports and updates from subcommittees. Anyone have any updates? I doubt it.
We actually probably do. Dorothy, are you the best prepared to offer that?
Sure.
Kingsley and I have each missed a couple meetings lately, but
So the Racial Disparities Subcommittee has contacted some national experts in this area. One being, I talked to people in King County and Seattle, and then through them was connected to a woman who is starting, who's a fellow at the Haas Institute in Berkeley, and they are starting a national coalition of racial equity initiatives of government bodies involved in doing some sort of racial equity initiatives. Dubuque is the only jurisdiction in Iowa that has joined this consortium. But she gave us some good information, and I'm going to pursue with her some more specifics about who's doing this sort of racial equity impact analysis, who are the experts in her view in criminal justice. We also got a proposal from the National Council on Crime and Delinquency to actually come in and design an ongoing strategy to do this racial equity work, and then to do the first couple of pieces that we want. It is $30,000, and that's probably out of our ballpark at this point, so I'm going to talk more with them about what pieces they might be able to do more cheaply. And we're also in communication with the Sentencing Project, which has a manual on how to do racial equity work in criminal justice systems, and seeing if through them we can get some technical expertise to come and assist us in putting something out. I think what's become clear is that we have some knowledge, but we don't have the technical expertise to do it ourselves. And so I think it is going to cost money. I think long-term, to have someone in the adult criminal justice system, the same way we have Latasha LaRoche, what's her last name now? Deloche. Overseeing that for juvenile justice is, in the long term, we're going to need to do that, I believe. But I think even before we do that, we need somebody to help us set up a system for doing the racial equity impact analysis and begin to strategize where interventions need to come. So that's what we're plugging along.
Thank you. Any other updates from committees? All right. Additional comments from the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee or others? Comments from the public? I do want to note Supervisor Etheridge did apologize for not being here today. He was here all day. He's heading up to Des Moines for meetings on legislative issues for the county.
Just an announcement that this Saturday at the Unitarian Church, there is from 9:30, I think, until either 12 or 1, a workshop on, with the basis of it being Michelle Alexander's book, the new Jim Crow, mass incarceration in an age of colorblindness, aimed toward looking at issues in Iowa and solutions toward changing racial disparities in the justice system. So I would invite, it's free. It's being put together led by a guy named Harvey Harrison, who's an attorney in Des Moines. So,
Sorry, Dorothy, 9 o'clock, did you say?
9:30, I think, is when it starts. I think registration is at 9.
And
then
people just show up.
People just show up,
Okay.
as far as I know. That's what I'm going to do.
Thank you.
Other comments? Appreciate all of you being here today and your efforts to help us address a pretty important issue in our community, and for all the years that you've all put into this. Hope you're willing to put a lot more years. Thanks. All
Yes,
right.
they're all nodding their heads off because
Our meeting is adjourned.
no sleep.
No sleep.